Hello, everyone. I'm Christian Gardner, and I'm alongside Thanelie Bien-Aime and Jade Knight, two activists within our Seton Hall community during this Black Lives Matter movement. And now things have come back to prominence as we've seen countless of killings in the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, and so many even after the killing of George Floyd. But you guys have been prominent within the movement and started creating for your own within your community. Now, Jade, I know you live out in California and you started planning your own demonstrations. Could you tell us a little bit about what went into planning that and what you did out there?
Yeah, so the obvious uproar of the George Floyd killing, sparked a lot of protests across the country. And as someone who studies political science and got into that for specific reasons for fighting for Black lives within law, I felt it was my duty to at least try to organize a protest and see what I can do. So I reached out to my friend and the local Black Lives Matter chapter in my city, and they provided a lot of resources. And so we kind of set up the agenda to highlight Black voices within our community, as well as the local politics, because local politics affect us day to day. And so it's easy to get caught up in national news. But I felt that it was necessary to do what we can locally first, because, everything that we see, could be stopped, could be helped if we did it locally, if we promoted legislation, the Congress members and stuff like that, who needs to be voted out, all that type of stuff, the budget. And so I did a lot of research, I guess, into the police budget in my city and what that was going to. And I found like training was less than $6,000 a year, while weapons and all the other stuff was in the millions. So I did, that was important to highlight, and that was kind of the basis of our protest. And we also did singers and artists, Black voices that are prominent, that need to be heard, that are beautiful. And I guess since then, I've come into this, like, I need to fight for Black women. That's kind of like my passion now, just because we're unheard. So moving forward, that's what I would like to do, is lead a protest that's, specifically designed to highlight Black women. And yeah.
Now, Nellie, you are the BSU president here at Seton Hall, and you had the chance to go out to the Newark protest when that happened. Can you tell us a little bit how that came to be, and for yourself, what it was like being there?
The Newark protest happened early on during this like uproar of the Black Lives Matter movement. And that was led by the People's Organization for Progress. And it was a solidarity rally. And really the amount of unity that was there was just amazing. And there's like so much power in unity, from the community leaders to the community members. It really was like a powerful movement. The amount of people that was there was phenomenal. Seeing people rally together in that way was phenomenal. Like it just really felt like an amazing movement altogether. And so I think part of being there was really just understanding our purpose within the community. Like, these are my brothers and my sisters that I'm fighting for and fighting with. And so seeing that togetherness, I think, was super important, like just the demonstration in itself and us being there for each other. As for just like other things that I've like taken part in, I helped to lead like the organizing of Project Amplify, a George Floyd discussion, which this was a program co-hosted by the Black Student Union and the Council of Africana Studies at Seton Hall. Definitely shout out to the e-board members and our advisors, because it really took a lot of time and commitment to put that together. But it was a guided discussion. It broke down a lot of the facts of George Floyd's murder And it also just gave people like the space to discuss and to reflect on various points and topics related to the situation. And Project Amplify is a series of actions. So that's what we created it to be. And so the Black Caucus organizations like will continue to have like these important conversations and these teaching moments. You know, we will also just continue like providing ways to take action within the Black Lives Matter movement because we want the movement to continue. After that kickoff event, which was the George Floyd discussion, the National Council of Negro Women had hosted a Juneteenth cookout in Newark, which was also a really great event. It had speakers, performers, and gave people the chance to enjoy with like other community members. And that was also in itself was so important because not everybody really knows about Juneteenth. And part of this movement is also to continue learning and like uncovering the truth, right? And because not everyone knows about Juneteenth, it's not their faults. It's because we're not taught about it in history. It's not recognized as a holiday. And so we're told that, you know, like, okay, Independence Day is July 4th, but Black people weren't legally free then. And even years later, you know, Black people are still fighting for their rights, still being oppressed by the systems that weren't made for them. And so learning that history and having people understand this time of what was independence for us and what is the history of our independence is super important. But all of it has just been, it's shown a lot of unity amongst the Black community, amongst anyone who wishes to fight racism, really. But yeah, just bringing people together, you know.
I think that was great you said that. And as you said, not a lot of people knew about Juneteenth. And this year, it was so big across the entire country, as it should be, as it's truly when America held up to being what it's supposed to be. But as you're saying, how do we continue this momentum within our Seton Hall community when we return back to campus? I know you've already continued these Project Amplify, like you said, and within the Black Caucus and things like that.
Yeah, so just continuing to educate ourselves and others. But of course, it starts with the self. But that means self-acknowledgement, self-effort. Like these are things that you have to be willing to do. You have to be willing to have those conversations, to take part in these events, these programs, to do what you can to make sure that things are changing and not just staying the same and not just going back to normal because normal wasn't okay. So being vocal about what we want to see is extremely important during these times and actually making those efforts to do that. And then also, of course, like it's called Project Amplify, you know, amplifying the voices that need to be heard. You might not know what to say during this time, but there are definitely people expressing their concerns. So listen to them, understand them, and, you know, amplify what they have to say too.
Jade, what do you think about that, moving your activism from California back to when you come back to Seton Hall?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be different. And then with the factors of school and everything, it's easy to get to, you know, suppress this movement or just put it at the bottom like it's been for so many years. You know, oftentimes we see these killings and then things go back to normal in 1-2 weeks, but we can't let that happen this time because, you know, we're just tired of fighting for our human rights. And so I think, yeah, what Nellie said, we have to first hold ourselves accountable, you know, keep pushing to learn, keep striving to educate yourself because really it's your job and you can worry about other people later. That shouldn't be your main concern as long as you're doing what you need to do. If they want to listen, they want to listen. At the end of the day, you can't force anybody to do anything, but hopefully through your, you know, strives to learn and stuff, that will encourage others as well.
Now, Jade, you started talking about this earlier, but given that you both are two Black women and leading the charge in this movement, tell us a little bit just about how important it is, how essential it is that we hear Black women's voices within this movement.
Yeah, so, you know, Black women have always been on the front lines, whether they're actually on the front lines or just leading the movements. The Black Lives Matter movement was created by Black women. Say Her Name, Me Too, all that stuff. Black women was behind it. And so we might not get recognition, but we are leaders in this. And so highlighting Black voices is a different thing because we're just minorities within the Black community. And, you know, oftentimes our struggle of being both Black and a woman is overlooked, and it takes a back seat because we see Black men being killed in the media and we don't see as many Black women, but it happens, and we're molested, we're sexually assaulted by police, and that narrative is not shown. And so I think Black women, you know, it's our experience, and that needs to be highlighted, but people also have to listen because we've been talking about it for years, but people also need to listen. And I can't speak on the LGBTQ community, but that's also a minority within this, within the Black community that needs to be highlighted. And we should have LGBTQ leaders talking about their experience as being LGBTQ and Black. So
yeah, I think those were definitely a lot of great points. You know, Malcolm X said it best when he said the most disrespected person in America, the most unprotected person in America, most neglected person in America. That's all the Black women. And we keep hearing it so often, right? Like, people aren't going hard enough for Breonna Taylor. People aren't going hard enough for Atiana Jefferson, for all of these women who are also victims of the many issues of being Black in America, of being a Black woman in America. Yeah, we got to fight harder for them. And I think women taking the lead and role, like taking the leading roles in these movements, just brings light to intersectionality, and like it brings light to the overlapping forms of discrimination in general.
Now, for some, they haven't been able to make it out to protests, or they've continued to stay silent beyond the sidelines. What would you say to someone that may not see exactly the same way or continue to just remain in the dark?
Well, for one, I would say that, you know, it's understanding for somebody to not be able to demonstrate in a certain way. Just because, you know, obviously we're facing many issues during this time. Racism isn't the only pandemic that's going on. And there's going to be various factors that will cause people to not be able to participate in that way. But it just gets to a point where you have to realize that, you know, as people have been saying, silence is complacency. And this is definitely not a time to be silent. Oftentimes people might say, you know, that they don't want to get into politics issues. And part of the problem with that is that this isn't necessarily a politics issues, because it is about human rights as well. But then also just realizing that politics is a part of life. It's a part of being in America and being a community member. So you saying you don't want to be taking part in politics, or don't want to get involved, or you don't, you know, you don't want to touch on that, is, again, you just being complacent with the things that are happening.
Yeah, I agree completely. Politics affect us every day, whether we like it or not. Legislation affects us. That's another killer of Black people, is the legislation against us. And so to not care about politics is really harmful. But yeah, protests, all that stuff, that might not be your way to help the Black Lives Matter movement, fight racism, but there's always something you can do. And the easiest thing to do is educate yourself. And so if you're on the sidelines just because you don't know what to do or whatever, that's, you know, I can't say I agree with that or like that, because this has been going on for months now. And, you know, we see it everywhere. You see it all over social media. And so if you're not doing anything by now, then yeah.
I'm so glad that you said that. And right before we wrap up, let's just hit real quick. At this time is a time of education. As you said, people don't know what's going on. What's like a good place for people to start? Just like one topic you would want everyone to just look in for on their own accord.
I think it's so important for people to understand what the Black experience in America has been like, and what they want to see it be in the future. Because history, you know, shows that, you know, obviously we've heard that before, that if you don't know your history, it will repeat itself. And there's certain things that have happened in our past that we're not going to get rid of simply by deciding that, okay, they don't exist anymore. They're still going to persist in our mentalities, in the way we interact with each other, in our education systems, and all the systems that we live with today. And so I think understanding the history, understanding the things that you don't want to see repeated, understanding the things that went wrong, I think is so important. So, if you want to help your neighbor, for example, let's say you're not part of the Black community, you say that you want to help your neighbor. How can you do that if you don't understand their experience? If you don't try to understand their experience, is what I'm saying, because you'll never fully get it, but try to see the things that they're struggling with.
So I've been trying to do this like mass incarceration series, because obviously that is a lot, and I found out a lot of stuff I didn't know. And what I guess I would mainly want people to educate themselves on, starting to educate themselves on, is the roots of crime, and how affordable housing is usually in low-income neighborhoods, and that keeps the cycle of crime going. There's no resources and nowhere to turn to. People are working 2 to 3 jobs. And then the education system is also, in low income neighborhoods, it's completely different, because something I learned is what is it called? House tax? I don't know what it's called. Property tax. That is given, that half of that funds public schools. And so property tax in low income neighborhoods is not as high, and therefore the resources are much lower, and the education levels are obviously substantially lower as well. And so I would start there. And then there's obviously many other factors why crime happens, and then criminal justice system, mass incarceration, reentry, all that. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you said that. I think a great place to start looking at mass incarceration is 13th by Ava DuVernay, which is on Netflix. If anyone to begin their research anywhere, I would say start right there on that documentary. But is there anything else you guys would want to add?
No, just continue to do the work, because that's what it takes. It takes some work. Just getting informed and being able to participate in the movement actively,
Jade,
Yeah.
anything else?
I just want to end this quote from a TED Talk, and she was saying the only American system built for Black people was slavery, and arguably, mass incarceration. So you just have to think about that. All these systems need to be torn up, started again, reformed. I don't know, but
one at a time. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for being on here and talking with me today. For everyone else, it's Thanelie Bien-Aime and Jade Knight. I'm Christian Gardner. Thank you so much for joining us.